Hello everyone, I hope you're well. Thank you very much for watching this video. In this video, I want to talk about moving to the UK, particularly as an international entrepreneur, or even as a skilled employee, to be honest, or even as a migrant in general. This will most likely be applicable to a lot of people, but there are some elements that are particularly useful and applicable to entrepreneurs as well, who are my key and primary clients. So in this particular video, I want to talk about the downsides / cons of moving to the UK as an international person. Call it an immigrant, an expat. To be honest, I don't really know what the difference is with those two words, but let's not get into that one. Generally as someone who wants to move to the UK. So let's just stick it to that. Now, there are a lot of, if you Google search, pros and cons of living in the UK, there's a lot of content and material on it. But in this particular one, I want to talk about the downsides and disadvantages in particular. The reason why is, as I've said before, authenticity is a principal factor in my videos on my channel. I do believe in authentic content because, one, I am an authentic individual. I'd like to think I am. And also, I think there is a sort of a substantial lack of authenticity, especially when it comes to online channels and social media. Another proof of which will be this. As someone who helps international entrepreneurs move to the UK, or people who operate in a similar industry to me, what they would do is only focus on the advantages and the positives. Yes, please move here. It's a great place for entrepreneurs. Please move to the UK. Yes, sure it is. However, in this particular video, I want to dedicate this video to only the downsides. And I'm going to talk about, I'm going to focus on the people factor a lot. Okay, so when you look at pros and cons of living in the UK, a lot of it will focus on, the NHS or, train delays, expensive housing. I will cover this one though. Stuff like that. I want to focus on the people factor. The people factor is an important one. It's important to not just to your well-being, but it's also very important to your professional success. So, with that in mind, let's begin. Before I begin, let me say this. This video is in no way a generalization of people at all. There is, in any place on earth, there are good and bad people. I've lived in the UK for over 12 years now, and I've been fortunate enough to have met some of the loveliest, kindest people on planet Earth. I just need to say that before, this video is misconstrued. My videos are generally not misconstrued, so I try to keep it neutral. But it's important for that to be said, that this is not a generalization of people at all in any way, because that's just incorrect in every sense. And most importantly, it's morally and ethically incorrect to generalize any group of people. So with that in mind, let's begin. Okay, so let's talk about the people factor, and that's the first starting point for my video. So, the people factor. Now, one issue with the people factor in the UK is, this partly may boil down to, a reserved culture, and that's totally fine. If you are moving to a different country, you should sort of adapt to the culture of that host country and not vice versa. So I'm not really talking about the reserved culture in the UK, but I'm talking about a general sense of dread that exists, particularly after the 2020 pandemic and also after the cost of living crisis, I believe. If you come from a culture that's, it's based on people and, close relations, you may be disappointed in the UK because socializing in the UK, it's difficult. Okay, most people, per my experience and from what I see, and surprisingly a lot of young people, They would just rather sit at home and watch TV at the weekends and go to work, or it's the culture of just binge drinking. This may not appeal to a lot of people, especially those from other, slash Eastern cultures, I would say, that's based on, fostering close relationships with people. So really, you should keep this one in mind, that socializing here, it's different, and lifestyles tend to be more individualistic, so to speak. Okay, so another factor is societal polarization. And this is very much based on class rather than other factors. And I think, unfortunately, the UK has a major class divide, which does perhaps lead to a certain degree of polarization within society. And I think as, a skilled migrant, regardless of you being wealthy or not wealthy, you are somehow punished by that. I'm talking about skilled migrants in particular here. So that is another major problem. Another factor is the current housing prices. It's very expensive to either rent or buy a property in the UK. The money that you spend on, let's say, a 2-bedroom property in the UK will get you a far smaller house compared to many other parts of the world, for example, Canada. So really, this is, again, there's a lot of factors behind it. The purpose of this video is not to construct, the sort of cause and effect of each of these points, but rather to give an overview of those disadvantages of living in the UK as an international entrepreneur / a skilled migrant. So another point to keep in mind is really the housing issue that will certainly affect you, and it's something that you need to be ready for. So another rather, I wouldn't even say this is controversial, but it's a result of, the current political climate and, sort of the current state of the economy as well. But I think this is something that will really take a toll on your mental health after a while, and that is microaggressions. There is unfortunately a lot of tensions within the UK society, especially right now at the moment with, events such as the refugee crisis that's going on. I'm not about to comment on those things. As I said, this video is mainly aimed towards international entrepreneurs and skilled migrants. And I think there really needs to be a divide and a categorization of these because, a refugee is very different to an international entrepreneur. There's a whole different circumstances surrounding each. But unfortunately, there is a lot of microaggressions that are there due to these racial tensions that will eventually take a toll on your health. For example, I've noticed this, that when I do have a chronic condition, so every time I had to use the NHS, I somehow felt this sort of attitude that I'm sort of a burden to the system, which I think is unfair when I'm paying for it. Another part is navigating the immigration system and the general sort of policy making behind the current immigration system. I've done a separate video on the key flaws of the current innovator founder visa. So if you need to see more information about that, please refer to that video. However, I would say that the visa rules for skilled migrants can be rather unfair. For example, recently the visa fees have increased and the Prime Minister said that he needs to do this instead of raising people's taxes, which I don't think, people who are trying to bring their money into the country and are taking a huge risk should really be punished for the current state of the economy. But that's just my opinion.